Yeah, and it's like the before and after stuff too. It's like you mentioned, like how long it takes to get home. Like you're literally dedicating your entire day to something that's just a couple hours because of it all.
Yeah.
When he told me the Raiders too, I was like, what the heck? But then I started thinking, I was like, oh, that was a rivalry when he was growing up. Like, all right, let me tweet this out.
You see, Pat Mahomes and his fiance are pregnant now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Lamar Jackson's getting a brother.
What can't dude, what can't this guy do? I really want to know.
All right, ready?
Sir.
Water almost fell. All right. 3, 2, 1. Welcome to the Around the 412 Fantasy Football Show, proudly presented to you by Crowworthy, where winners are serving winners coast to coast with sports, gambling, and more. You can follow at Crowworthy on Twitter. You can visit us at crowworthy.com for podcasts such as this one, blogs, more, all that good stuff. Betting advice. They're great at betting stuff. I am not, but that's neither here nor there. I'm Smitty. With me, as always, my co-host, Donnie Drew. And Donnie, what is going on?
Dude, not too much. I'm not too great on the betting myself, although I did cash in on a prop bet for Trubisky to be benched this week. So.
Oh, really? There's my remote. Was that a thing?
Yeah. Before the season, shout out to Logan Bell because he put me on it. Before the season, there was a prop. It was an anytime one that had Mitch Trubisky being benched, and threw some money, and I got a little bit more money back. So
Not bad. Yeah, I mean, kind of weird timing, right? I mean, the benching of Mitch Trubisky. They're 2-0 on the season. Were they winning at that point in the game, or were they trailing? They were
No,
trailing.
they were still trailing. I'm pretty sure, and like Trubisky's numbers didn't look terrible either. But I mean, when you have a guy like Nick Foles just come in and just be a spark plug like that, I definitely understand.
I mean, yeah, it definitely worked out. Now I mentioned they were 2-0. Now they're 3-0. Foles comes in, throws 3 touchdowns, including the game winner with what, a minute so left.
Something like that, yeah, a little over.
And by the way, what a play! He took an absolute shot on that play. I can't believe he even got rid of the ball. But yeah, Nick Foles. I mean, maybe he'll come up later in the show. We'll see. But first, I got to tell you guys about one of our sponsors, which is Manscaped. So, support for Round the 412 is brought to you by Manscaped, who is the best in men's below-the-waist grooming. Manscaped offers precision-engineered tools for your family jewels. They obsess over their technology developments to provide you the best tools for your grooming experience. I have one. Our co-host, who does not do this show with us, but it will be back tomorrow with me, Tyler, has one. Our friends have them. They all love them. It's great. The Lawnmower 3.0, which is the newest in its line. They spent 18 months perfecting this thing. It's a third-generation trimmer. It features cutting-edge ceramic blade technology to reduce trimming accidents thanks to advanced skin-safe technology. Pioneered by Manscaped themselves. It's premium. It lasts 90 minutes off its charger so you can get a longer shave. It's waterproof so you can use it in the shower. It illuminates with an LED light the grooming area for a closer and more precise trim. It has a 7,000 RPM motor with quiet stroke technology. The charging stand is USB, so you can plug that sucker right into the wall and charge it. I got one, like I said. Tyler has one. We both love them. The ball deodorant is great. The ball toner is great. The cologne is great. The body wash is great. All this stuff is great. Well, you raised your hand. What was that about?
Yeah. So for guys like me who are interested in buying this stuff, I'm trying to save a little bit of money. Because understandably, it's some dough, but well worth it. Is there anything you can do for me?
I mean, I think a lot of people are going to be looking to save a few bucks wherever you can, especially in 2020. So what I can do for you is tell you that using the code 412 at checkout when you put whatever you want in your checkout. You use code 412 at checkout. That's going to save you 20% off that purchase. Plus, it eliminates the shipping cost. So
just the code 412.
The code 412. It's exclusive to this show.
Wow.
Wow. 20% off that, even if you're somebody that listens in the UK or Canada, they're there as well, and they ship to those countries as well. So again, use code 412 at checkout. That will save you 20%, plus it will ship for free. Manscaped.com is where you can do that. Moving on, I mentioned this on Twitter for anybody that follows us over there and I'm listening or watching this show. I assume that you do. If not, go follow us at Around the 412. I mentioned this. We got some good feedback, and we always appreciate that. So please keep that coming, whether it be to Donnie personally, me personally, or our joint Twitter account. I know that this has been something that I've thought about too, and I'm sure it was weighing on Donnie's mind as well. The show has been going a little long, and I completely agree with that. I understand that. So that was kind of some feedback that we got, was the show was getting close to like 2 hours. And if I keep talking, that might be the case for this show as well. But what I'm getting at is, starting this week and continuing on in the following weeks, what we're going to do is each of us will cover 2 positions with our weekly rankings, and we will alternate each week. So for this week, I'm covering the running backs and wide receivers. For week 4, Donnie will be doing the quarterbacks and tight ends. We're still going to do the waiver wire stuff, and I got some bust and surprise. Donnie, I don't know if you did that as well, if you want a separate direction. I know last week you kind of foreshadowed who would be bust and surprises.
Yeah, so I didn't get to that this week, so I just have the 2 positional rankings and then some waivers.
Okay. Yeah, perfectly fine. So again, that is going to be a way that we kind of trim it down, trim the fat from the show, but at the same time, we're still going to be giving you those weekly rankings, and we will still both be weighing in a little bit on the positions. So without a further ado, I say that we start with a position we have been starting with. Donnie, go ahead and give us some tight ends.
Yeah, not a great week for tight ends, especially when you talk about a guy like Mark Andrews, only catching a couple passes off of 8 targets, but I'll get to him later. Always such a hard projection, for a position that's just so difficult to gauge week in and week out. But without further ado, my number 5 tight end for week 4 going to be Mo Alley-Cox versus the Chicago Bears. 2 double-digit points in back-to-back weeks. The Bears have allowed a tight end to score the last 2 out of 3 weeks. His usage is a little bit concerning to me. He doesn't catch a whole lot of passes, so that means whenever he does, his touchdown rate and his success rate overall as a tight end is pretty astronomical. So I'm not sure exactly if that can continue, but it's pretty evident that Mo Alley-Cox, for the time being, is one of the top targets for Phillip Rivers on the Colts. So.
I like that, actually, and I'm going to talk about him a little bit later on. But yeah, Jack Doyle was active this week, and it was still Mo Alley-Cox that was, pretty much tight end 1 for that team. You mentioned, is he a little bit touchdown dependent? Yeah, I think, scoring touchdowns in back-to-back weeks, and you see where he finished scoring wise without that touchdown, what do his numbers look like? But at the same time, the fact that he's kind of overtaken Jack Doyle and Phillip Rivers, a guy that we know is going to throw the ball to tight ends. And that's been, consistent with his career. I really like Mo Alley-Cox. He was a guy that when, they had Ebron there last year and the Steelers were looking for tight end help, I was actually pounding the table for them to go get him from Indianapolis because of how low he was in their totem pool, but I thought he was a pretty talented guy. Now it's kind of been his coming out party this year. So yeah, I really like Mo Alley-Cox.
Yeah, we'll see. While I did say that his production is kind of touchdown dependent, week 2 he did have about 5 catches for a little 100 yards without a touchdown, and he still produced then. So we'll see. It's just a matter of whether or not he can stay consistent. My tight end 4, though, moving on, was going to be T.J. Hockenson versus the New Orleans Saints. Saints, when it comes to tight ends, have allowed the most targets, yards, and touchdowns to the position. Hawkinson's off to a great start in 2022 double-digit games, and I just think he craps the top 5 once again. He didn't produce last week versus the Cardinals defense, historically known for allowing, terrific tight end performances. But Hawkinson, I know he started out kind of strong last year, but he looks like the tight end that the Lions drafted him to be. So T.J. Hockenson, tight end 4 versus the Saints.
Yeah, I went back and forth between him and Hayden Hurst last week as my tight end. I ended up using Hurst, and he scored a 1-yard touchdown, so that kind of saved his fantasy day. Thank God. But TJ Hawkinson, I mentioned, before the season started, year 2 tight ends, kind of similar to his college teammate Noah Fant. These are guys that you expect to take a leap in year 2, and I think that just now, getting Kenny Galladay back in that offense. Obviously, Matthew Stafford's back. Marvin Jones Jr., who, by the way, is also a phenomenal singer. Just wanted to throw that in there. That offense has some sneaky weapons, and we'll see what they can do from the running game. Adrian Peterson, the ageless wonder, adding something on the ground. I do like TJ Hawkinson's projection as the year goes on, and I definitely think that this is a matchup where he could finish in the top 5.
Yeah, we'll see. Especially at the tight end position, it's all about matchup and opportunity. And, the Saints are dead last in terms of allowing points to tight end. So you kind of do have to like that. Tight end 3 is going to be Travis Kelce versus the New England Patriots. I feel like we run out of adjectives, to describe Kelce on a week-to-week basis. He's undoubtedly the focal point in the Kansas City Chiefs offense. I feel like he's matchup proof week to week. We saw the tremendous, style of play he had against Baltimore last night, but the Chiefs carved up a very talented Ravens defense. Going this week against a New England defense where they held Darren Waller to just a couple catches last week. Bill Belichick thrives in taking, what you do best away on the offensive side of the ball. But I just feel like Kansas City is way too talented, at every position for a guy like Belichick to focus and key in on a guy like Kelce. So, you have to trust the workload there. You have to trust the talent. Kelce comes in at number 3 for me.
I can't wait to see who the top 2 are now. To not see Travis Kelce in the top 2, that's a bit surprising to me. I understand the matchup, though, too. I mean, look at what they just did against the Raiders with a tight end that maybe you're about to bring up in your top 2. The way that they shut him down was pretty impressive. I don't necessarily think that I see that happening with Travis Kelce, but with that matchup, with what they did against another guy you consider a top 4 tight end, I mean, I definitely think that should be taken into consideration. So I really have no issue with you having him at number 3.
Yeah, and speaking of the guy they did limit, Patriots speaking, number 2 is going to be Darren Waller versus the Buffalo Bills. Bills are giving up the second most yards to tight ends right now, just outside of the top 5 for receptions allowed for the position. Darren Waller wasn't 100% last week. And it came out before the game that he was dealing with a little bit of injury. So hoping he can regain 100% health and bounce back. I'm not holding grudges. I don't do knee-jerk reactions, as Mike Tomlin would say. I'm not in that sort of business. So. We'll take it.
Never paint with a broad brush.
Exactly. We don't live in our fears. Darren Waller going up against a very susceptible Buffalo Bills defense when it comes to tight ends. We already know the connection is established between him and Derek Carr, and I just think last week was a bad week for him. So I do think he bounces back, and I really like the matchup. So he comes in at number 2 for me.
I see Sarge is here. Stubb says, I mean, am I potentially the best waiver wire fantasy GM in history? Yeah, I think he picked up James Robinson off the waiver wire, and then he popped off on Thursday Night Football against the Dolphins. That's probably what he's referring to. I'm not sure if there's something else there as well. But yeah.
Shoot, I don't know. Smitty suggested Gaskin last week, and then he ended up having a pretty decent night. I think 15 fantasy points if you're in a PPR league last week.
Yeah, and even more so than the fantasy points itself, just short term. The amount of touches he's getting. I mean, he's on the field 75% of the snaps, and this guy still isn't owned in that many leagues. So I just continue to see that share going up. But Sarge is curious as to why you say Tyler Lockett's last name the way that you do.
Lockett?
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm weird. Is it Lockett?
I guess, yeah, I think it's just Lockett, but well, actually, we should probably talk about that too, because you don't get to cover. Well, who's your tight end 1 first? And I have something else I want to bring up.
Mark Andrews.
I figured.
Yeah. I already said I don't do knee-jerk reactions. He still had 8 targets last week, despite only catching 3 passes. Faces a Washington defense that has allowed the 6th most fantasy points to tight end, so I do think he bounces back.
Yeah. Okay. So Stubbs got Cleveland's defense off the waiver wire too. They put up 15. Sarge picked up the Colts defense. They get 27. I mean, they got a pick 6 on the first drive. So yeah, they were definitely have a good day after that. What I wanted to bring up is now that you're not going to be putting your weekly rankings in for receivers, I wanted to mention last week, I remember we were split on which Seattle receiver was going to pop off. And even though, DK Metcalf caught a touchdown, Probably should have had 2. Tyler Lockett's the guy that scored 3 touchdowns. So he was the one that finished in the top 5, which you had.
Yeah, I can't say I saw a 3-touchdown game coming for Tyler Lockett. DK easily could have, been in that conversation had he caught that first touchdown pass. But, it's a story for another day, I guess.
I'm also, based off your ranking, super happy that I didn't have the tight ends this week because, when you have Travis Kelce going against New England, but he's pretty much like your consensus number 1 week in and week out. Yeah, that's going to be hard to rank. So I am glad that I do not have the tight ends this week.
Yeah, it's a chore to say the least, but you got to do what you got to do. At least we're not doing like kickers and defenses and stuff.
Yeah, no, never that. I'm waiting to see if I can get Cedric Wilson from Dallas and Jimmy Graham. Actually, Jimmy Graham's gonna come up later in the show for me, but we'll see. I'll go to wide receivers first. Now I actually have 7 guys on here, but I have 2 asterisks. The reason being the guys that I have towards the top of this list, 2 of them we expect to come back, but we'll see. So I'll start at number 5, and I'll just mention who my 6 and 7 are when I get to 1 and 2. I have Robert Woods as number 5, a guy that's going against the New York Giants here. This is another one, I just mentioned what happened last week with us, that similar situation. Is it going to be Tyler Lockett? Is it going to be DK Metcalf? They could both have very good games, but is it going to be Robert Woods? Or is it going to be Cooper Kupp? And that's kind of a weekly thing for the Rams. They can both get numbers, but who's going to be the wide receiver 1 for them that week? I'm going to go with Robert Woods here. I think he's more consistent than Cooper Kupp. I think that the floor is safer there, but I think this is a week that he could really pop off. The Giants, we saw their defense go against the Steelers. No one had like Juju caught 2 touchdowns, but the most yardage anybody had was 69 yards in that game. I think that this is a game though. Yeah, nice. Very nice. I think this is a game though where the Rams are just throwing. I think Goff throws for about 350 in this game. And I do think that, the pass catchers, Woods, Kupp, Higbee, maybe a little bit of my guy, Van Jefferson. I think that the pass catchers are in for big days, but I'll take Robert Woods to have the biggest day for the pass catchers for the Rams.
Yeah, and the thing with Robert Woods is that he adds another dimension. The Rams love running jet sweeps to him, so I think he had another 30 yards rushing as well. And that's a consistent thing, too, that they love handing him the ball and just letting him hit to the edge with the speed that he has. But no, I think you nailed it on the head. Robert Woods is one of the more consistent receivers. He doesn't put up crazy touchdown numbers, like a guy like Devontae Adams. So I just feel like every week he's hitting around that 15 to 20 point range.
My wide receiver 4 is going to come in as a guy coming off a monster game. Tyler Lockett going against the Dolphins is my wide receiver 4. I think him and Russ just keep the train going. This MVP campaign that Russell Wilson has put together through three weeks. Going against the Dolphins, I mean, we'll see if they get Byron Jones back. Obviously, Xavier Howard's there. Not bad corners by any means. I think they're one of the better duos in the league, to be honest with you. But we're talking about Russ Wilson, the game that Tyler Lockett just had against Dallas. The momentum is just – I'm just going to keep riding that momentum. Tyler Lockett comes in as my wide receiver 4.
Yeah, I don't have to talk about the love I have for Tyler Lockett. Tremendous game against the Cowboys last week. And I think it definitely helps when you have just a monster like DK Metcalf on the outside, allowing – a guy like Lockett to work on the inside, outside the slot receiver position. So, I said I didn't see 3 touchdowns for him last week. I don't see another 3 touchdown performance from him this week, but he should be around that top 5 category every single week.
I mean, maybe he scores 3 again. We'll see.
As an owner, I'd be thrilled if he did that.
Sarge has a question. Should I start Kenny Golladay going against New Orleans or Keenan Allen going against? That just disappeared. I believe it was Tampa Bay.
Kind of like Golladay.
That's tough. I mean, the fact that that's even a decision that you have to make, and I know who his receivers are. So, I believe he has Chris Godwin as well. I mean, he has to make the decision between one of those 2 guys for a flex.
Yeah.
That's tough. I like Galladay's matchup better. I think the Tampa Bay secondary, especially the corners, are sneaky good. They're so young. I think they're getting better. And I still, I think that Justin Herbert is definitely the right choice for the Chargers. We'll see if that continues to I I think that I would say Kenny Golladay as well going against the Saints here. I think that that's definitely the safer pick because of the quarterback situation for both of those teams. And I understand Golladay, was a little banged up. Last week was his first game back. I think that, him and Matthew Stafford have even more of a connection going into this game. I looked at that matchup and thought that, he was a borderline guy that I could put in here. New Orleans secondary does not scare me. We saw, that Monday Night Football game against the Raiders, what they were able to do. And we're talking about a much better passing offense, in my opinion, in Detroit. His wide receivers are Cooper, Woods, Golladay, and Allen. So, yeah, I mean, I definitely would be starting Cooper with it in that Dallas offense, which is ridiculous. Robert Woods obviously just talked about, and I think Kenny Golladay would be my third guy, and I'd leave Allen on the bench, at least for this week. Those two guys, though, might be a little bit more matchup based. I think Cooper and Woods are probably your two every week. My next guy that I have on here is going to be DeAndre Hopkins against the Carolina Panthers. And I considered him, I wanted to put him at number 2. Number 2 just has a better matchup for me, assuming that he plays. But DeAndre Hopkins and Kyler Murray, they're going to be a special duo for a long time. And another 100-yard game for Hopkins this past week. I just think that continues to grow that relationship, and going against Carolina secondary, that does not scare me by any means. I think he's in for a monster day.
Yeah, and what a connection it already is. Forget about what it can become. Right now, as it stands, it's got to be one of the best connections in the league with the numbers that DeAndre's putting up week to week. I don't think Carolina's secondary scares me either. What does scare me is Kyler's ball placement. He did not look good last week against the Lions. He made a lot of not great mistakes, but it's only one game. Granted, the mistakes don't necessarily affect DeAndre Hopkins' output as much. So as long as he's putting up those numbers week to week, he's always going to be like a minimum, like top 3 guy,
Yeah, I had Kyler as my quarterback 1 because of that matchup with Detroit. We've been doing that in the past. I actually only had 5 right out of the 20 spots. I didn't have a single receiver or tight end correct from last week.
Yeah, I didn't have any more than 2 per position. So not a phenomenal week.
Yeah, 3 quarterbacks, Russ, Mahomes, and Dak, and then Kamara and Eckler at running back. So, yeah, not a great week. Moving along, and again, these 2 guys now, these are assuming health. If these guys were to not play, bump everybody up. And then I mentioned I had 2 guys here with asterisks. Those are going to be Calvin Ridley against Green Bay and Amari Cooper as Cleveland as my fringe guys that I would put in here, assuming that Michael Thomas and then my wide receiver 1, who I'll talk about here in a little bit, if those 2 guys were to not go. But it sounds like Michael Thomas is going to try to come back. The question that I would have as a fantasy owner is to what degree. I'd be a little scared to throw him in my lineup. I mean, if he plays, you kind of have to. And it's a worst case scenario, in my opinion, if you're a Michael Thomas owner, because we're talking about an ankle sprain, a high ankle sprain, which is not easy to play with, which is not, something that typically guys do try to play through. So I'll be interested to see how he comes back. But going against the Detroit Lions here, I think that it's too good of a matchup to pass up on when you talk about a guy like Michael Thomas with the connection we know he has with Drew Brees, a New Orleans Saints offense that you can tell is missing him. I mean, it's right now, if they weren't getting what they were getting from Alvin Kamara, they'd be putting up like 10 points a game. So Alvin Kamara has put this offense on his shoulders, and, props to him, but they need Michael Thomas back to get that offense back to where it needs to be and get that team in contention. And going against Detroit here, if he plays, I got to have him in my top 3. So I put him at number 2.
Yeah, I feel like you're damned if you do, damned if you don't. If you put Michael Thomas in your lineups, you never want to run the risk of starting a guy like that and him popping off just because you're scared of him being hurt. But on the other side of the coin, you don't want to put him in your lineup just because he's playing, knowing that he might be a decoy. And, he might feel some slight pain first or second quarter and end up only getting you 2 or 3 points where you could have played somebody else. But, at the end of the day, you drafted him probably, half top of the first round for a reason. So, play your starters, let the rest kind of sort itself out. The matchup I love, and you're exactly correct when you talk about New Orleans missing him. They look like a completely different offense without him, and I'm not sure Alvin Kamara can, keep up the fantasy production, let alone the real life production on a week-to-week basis. But, we'll see. I think it would be smart if Thomas sat out another week. I think he said he had a high knee sprain. It's kind of what Christian McCaffrey had. The Panthers are taking a completely different approach. They put him on IR, don't want to risk anything at all. And, both of those guys just got paid recently as well. So at the end of the day, wide receiver 2 for Michael Thomas, if he's healthy, if he's playing, is kind of right around where he should be, especially against the Lions.
Yeah, and that's you mentioned that they should probably just take it another week, and I completely agree. Going against the Lions here, I'm not trying to take anything away from the Lions. I just mentioned their offense, but their defense is not up to par, and I think that New Orleans could and should beat them without Michael Thomas. And I would sit him another week, let him get healthy. Who do they play the following week? Let me see real quick here, because I think that they'd be much better suited letting him sit out that game, and then have him come back. They play the Chargers actually on Monday Night Football. So you'd have that extra day as well the following week. So to me, that's the course I would go, but he's eager to get back out there. I mean, it's hard to tell a guy, like that who just wants to be out there playing football. Hey, you know what? We're just going to sit you for another week. If he can go, he's going to go.
Yeah.
You just, like you said, you run the risk. If he gets in there and is pretty much just a decoy, or if he gets in there and re-aggravates that, without giving you anything, and then he's out of the game, and you already started him, and you can't put another guy in at that point. So we'll see how that plays out. A guy that I am more optimistic about is Davante Adams going against Atlanta. He comes in as my wide receiver 1. He actually traveled with the team. He was listed as doubtful before eventually not playing on Sunday Night Football. But there was a lot of optimism that he was going to go and at least be a decoy, as we were throwing around that word, in that game against New Orleans. And that tells me that he was pretty close. And I think that he returns this week. Going against Atlanta, they're going to put up points. The Packers offense is going on all cylinders right now. When you got a guy like Alan Lazard catch it for like 170 yards, Davante Adams is going to step right back in and be that target monster in Green Bay. I expect them to put up 35 plus on Atlanta, and Davante Adams is going to be a big part of that. So he's my wide receiver 1.
Yeah, and he was testing out, before the game itself. So it's not like he just traveled with the team, just to keep everybody on their feet. Like I feel like he legitimately wanted to play prior to the game, and he was out on the field testing it out, and it just wasn't the time for him. So I do fully expect him back. And whenever you have a healthy Davante Adams, kind of like what I said about Travis Kelce, he's matchup proof. It doesn't matter who's across him. It definitely does help when you have in Atlanta secondary. That's giving up, I think they're one of 2 teams to give up over 1,000 passing yards already through the season. So I just think that speaks volumes to the amount of work that Davante Adams should see next Monday night.
Yeah, I agree. Okay. You want to talk about quarterbacks, or should I go to my running backs?
No, well, we can rotate. I'll talk about the quarterbacks now. And I'll bring up Davante Adams quarterback here in a little bit. Number 5 quarterback. For week 4 is going to be Dak Prescott versus the Cleveland Browns. Dak leads the league in passing yards, so far, through 3 weeks of football. So, he's going against the Browns defense, just recently torched by, guys like Joe Burrow and Lamar Jackson. They did hold Dwayne Haskins in check, but I think Haskins and Prescott are on 2 completely different planets. I really like Dallas to rebound. It's not like they had a bad game offensively. Their defense just couldn't come through for him. So I think the Cowboys, while they don't necessarily, produce in the win or loss column, I think offensively, they're doing phenomenal. We saw that offensive production last week against the, somewhat okay Seattle Seahawks defense. The offensive line does scare me a little bit. I mean, they have just mismatches all across that offensive line. But when you have a talented offense, with talent everywhere, at every skill position, you kind of have to trust it. So, I'll take Dak at Cleveland for my quarterback 5.
They are expected to get Tyron Smith back, which would be a huge addition. I mean, that's what you're talking about, those 2 tackle spots. Seattle was getting pressure rushing 3 to end that game when Dak threw that desperation pick, which was a ridiculous play by him to even escape a sack to throw that ball. But yeah, if Tyron Smith comes back, that obviously, elevates that offensive line a tremendous amount. I think that Dak is definitely a top 5 play in this matchup against Cleveland. As you mentioned, that Thursday Night Football game, Joe Burrow hangs 30 on him in his second career start, throws the ball 61 times without getting picked off. We'll see what Cleveland's secondary looks like. I mean, I know that they've had injuries throughout the first couple of weeks. Will they get a guy like Greedy Williams back? What's Denzel Ward's health like going to be? We'll see, but still, with the amount of weapons that Dak has on that offense, in the backfield, and Ezekiel Elliott, and obviously the targets that he has to throw to, Amari Cooper, CeeDee Lamb, Michael Gallup, who just keeps getting better and better. This is going to be a game where Dallas puts up a ton of yards, and in my opinion, is going to put up a ton of points as well. I think that Dak is going to, account for at least 3 touchdowns in this game, and I think he's definitely top 5 play.
Quarterback 4 for week 4. Patrick Mahomes versus the New England Patriots. We've talked about Pat Mahomes playing solid, but never really cracking the top 5 and scoring. Man, what an answer he had for us last week. 40-point outing versus a considerably very tough Ravens defense. A lot of people believe them to be one of the best defenses in the league, and he made them not look like that. So this week he's going up against a New England Patriots defense just outside the top 10 in terms of passing defense, but it is the bottom 10 in the league in terms of passer ratings allowed for quarterbacks. So, Pat Mahomes is probably one of the more efficient quarterbacks we've ever seen. And, despite the evil genius that is Bill Belichick, Mahomes is humming right now. The entire offense seems to be playing great. Everybody's healthy. And, that Kansas City offense looks way too tough to stop right now.
Yeah, he's never going to be outside of my top 5. Yeah, this is a tougher matchup against the Patriots. I looked at what Russell Wilson was able to do against them, though. And, you just wonder, who is Gilmore going to be matching up against? I look at this game and think that it could be a very big day for Travis Kelce, who you have a tight end 3, but he would be the guy that I think is going to be a big beneficiary. I think that they'll look to try to eliminate, a guy like Tyreek Hill, Mecole Hardman, Sammy Watkins, and those guys, and Travis Kelce's going to be a focal point. Clyde Edwards-Helaire out of the backfield too. I think that he's going to be an X factor in this game. But yeah, I definitely think that Pat Mahomes is definitely a top 5 play. I mean, if I were doing quarterback rankings, I'm curious to see what your top 3 are going to be. I know who 2 of them are going to be actually, but I would definitely think that he's got to be inside my top 4. I might have him a little higher just because of who he is and the fact of what he just did last night, and also the fact he now has a kid on the way. There's going to be some motivation there, dad strength coming up soon. So, but yeah, no issue with where you have him.
Yeah, it's going to be really sad whenever that kid's finally born, and Pat Mahomes' dad bod is going to be much different from the rest of us.
He's going to be like, what's Uncle Jackson do? And he's going to have to show him his TikTok.
Oh, man. Quarterback 3 for this week is going to be Josh Allen versus the Las Vegas Raiders. I'll tell you, I was not on the Josh Allen hype train. I didn't think he could become a very good NFL quarterback, and I look stupid. I look very stupid. He's going against a Raiders defense that ranks 28th in quarterback pressure, so he's going to have some time to throw. He's hit 300 yards and 2 touchdowns in each game passing, only passing, not including what he's done on the ground. He scored rushing touchdowns the last 2 out of 3 games he's played so far in 2020. Allen's kind of the fantasy quarterback you want, just in terms of being able to pass very efficiently and run very efficiently. Guys not named Russell Wilson, he's probably the guy going against a Raiders defense that, 1, doesn't pressure the ball a lot, and 2, will probably give him, a lot of, room to throw. And, he's got guys like Stephon Diggs, who seems to be turning on the Jets on his own right. So, Josh Allen, quarterback 3 versus the Raiders. And yeah, I'll stop rambling. He makes me look stupid. So
I wasn't expecting that. I mean, I love Josh Allen. We talked about him like pretty much every week of being like a guy just outside the top 5. He finally cracks the top 5 here. But yeah, I mean, he's putting together a phenomenal season. Granted, that he's only played really the Rams. If you look at the Jets and Dolphins, not much competition there. But he even going back to his last 14 games, we're talking about a 33-3 touchdown interception ratio. I mean, this guy is coming into his own, and he's answering a lot of questions. He's answering a lot of criticism, and he looks like a guy that the Bills can build around. So I'm curious to see who the top 2 are here, because I know one of the guys they're expecting is going to be left out.
Yep. Yeah. Spoiler alert: Lamar Jackson is not in my top 5 this week.
Okay, well, that's the one.
It's not a slight against him. I think he will rebound. I think he'll figure things out. Yes, after that tough Monday night matchup, but I think that might take a week or 2. So just erring on a safe side. So speaking of erring, my quarterback 2 for this week is going to be Aaron Rodgers versus the Atlanta Falcons. Rodgers at least has 240 yards and 2 touchdowns in each game of the season playing against a Falcon secondary that is just one of two teams to allow over 1,000 yards this year. And I kind of brought that up earlier when we talked about Devontae Adams. They've also allowed 36 points per game. He's getting Devontae Adams back, it looks like this week at least. That offense right now looks almost as unstoppable as the Chiefs offense. They've destroyed everything in their way, and Aaron Rodgers has been a very big part of that. He's putting up the points week to week, and I think that continues versus a very poor Falcons secondary.
Yeah, Baltimore plays Cincinnati, huh? Yeah. Or no, that's week 5 I'm looking at. Who's Baltimore play this week?
Washington.
Okay.
Yeah, and Washington is second in the league in sacks. And I know Kansas City got a lot of decent pressure on Lamar last night. So
yeah, and you could even look at like the inverse of that. Say, look at what happened with week 1 and week 2 for Lamar Jackson. I mean, Baltimore scored so fast and the other team wasn't keeping pace that he didn't have big fantasy days because of that. Yeah. So say they get out to a big lead against Washington, we could see a similar situation happen there. We actually just got a question here in chat again. Looks like a potential trade. Trade away James Conner and Edelman in return for Julio Jones, and I'm assuming that's Ronald Jones. I have Kareem on the bench already.
Kareem Hunt?
My number 1 and 2 backs are Zeke and Eckler.
Oh, yeah.
I would
want to know what the
other... have Zeke, Eckler, and Julio Jones on the same team?
Yes,
is that what I'm hearing?
I'll take the check. Yeah. Yeah. Give me that 8 days out of 7.
Yeah, I know, Julio, dealing with a little bit of an injury this past week. Also the emergence of Calvin Ridley, but we've talked about it on here. I mean, Atlanta's going to put up yards. They're going to put up points, even if it's in garbage time. Calvin Ridley and Julio Jones are both going to be fantasy relevant this year. Hayden Hurst is going to be fantasy relevant. Russell Gage, even, as a flex play potentially. We'll see if that continues. But yeah, I would definitely, if you can acquire Julio Jones, I mean, that to me is a no-brainer. James Conner, nice start to the season, back-to-back 100-yard games. Julian Edelman popped off in week 2. But I like the chances of Julio Jones giving you more consistent fantasy production, and I'll take the back that you're getting back with that, and Ronald Jones, who I don't know. There's a lot of talk, Leonard Fournette taking over that backfield. We'll see. No one in that backfield really did anything this past week. That was all the damage done through the air. Brady had two passing touchdowns from the 1-yard line. Man, would that be frustrating if you own one of those running backs. Lost Cortland Sutton due to injury, so I can understand that. And he also has Galladay on his bench. So what is this, a 2-person league or what? What's going on here? You just playing against one of your buddies one-on-one every week? No, but I'm definitely, if you can acquire Julio Jones, I'm jumping on that. So I would be making that deal. Also, I don't know, I've never seen your name in chat before, so I'm not sure if you're new. But thanks for joining. Thanks for asking a question. If you aren't, please be sure to hit that subscribe button. We will be here every single Tuesday. So come in, hang out, ask questions. We're all for it.
Got the club going up on a Tuesday.
Yeah, facts. Where were we? Oh, QB1.
QB1. You already know who it is. Mr. MVP candidate himself, Russell Wilson, versus the Miami Dolphins after coming off a nice performance against the Dallas Cowboys. 3 consecutive 30-point games, and that's just in standard leagues. My home league, he dropped 40 points each of the 3 weeks. So 3 straight 30-point games start the season going up against a 25th ranked Miami passing defense. He's missing Chris Carson this week, so I think there might be more incentive for them to pass the ball even more than they're doing already. It's Russell Wilson. He's throwing the ball better than he's ever had. He's got weapons on the outside. He's got weapons on the inside. Everything about Seattle looks tremendous right now in terms of passing the ball. And he's showing no signs of slowing down. And I have no reason to believe he can't be quarterback 1 versus a Miami secondary. So.
Yeah, I think he's taken over that spot for me as like QB1 for the time being every single week. I mean, record-setting pace to kick off the 2020 season. And the good thing for him from a fantasy perspective, their defense is not good. So they're giving up a ton of points. That means game script is going to be very favorable for Russell Wilson to continue to push the ball down the field, throw the ball, attempt 40 passes a game. Chris Carson now going to be out for a couple weeks. You just mentioned Chris Carson, but he's going to miss some time. We'll see, what Carlos Hyde, Travis Homer, how those guys contribute to the running game. But they're going to be relying heavily on Russell Wilson as if they aren't already. to move the ball down the field for them, and they're not going to have as much balance. I'm sorry, but those guys aren't going to replicate what Chris Carson is for that offense. So, guys like, DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett, they've already been putting up huge numbers. That's going to increase even more. We'll see what the tight ends do. But yeah, Russell Wilson, QB1 until further notice for me.
Yeah, and I brought up the Falcons pass defense being one of 2 teams to allow over 1,000 passing yards already. The Seahawks were actually the other team that have allowed over passing yards through 3 weeks as well.
Yeah, so Sarge is answering some questions in chat for us. It's full point PPR, that trade. So he said, does that sway it one way or the other, or still go for it? I mean, to me,
Still go for it.
I mean, to me, that's more enticing. You're talking about getting Julio Jones in a full point PPR league. I understand that Edelman, once again, he had a career day with Cam Newton, but last week came back down to earth. And as I've mentioned before, when I brought up N'Keal Harry in that offense, Julian Edelman hasn't even been on the field for all their 2 wide receiver sets. He operates best in the slot, and if they're not putting 3 receivers on the field, he's not going to be on the field. So, I don't love that part of the New England offense when it comes to Julian Edelman's usage. And you're talking about at that point, who's more valuable to your team, James Conner or Julio Jones? We're Steeler fans, and I'm a James Conner fan, but I'll take Julio Jones 8 days out of 7.
Yeah, no, most definitely. I'll echo everything you said right now. Anytime you can grab a guy like Julio Jones and not fracture your running back core like it is right now, I feel like that's a must accept. That's a smash trade as soon as you can button right there.
Okay, so that was QB1, so we'll go to my running backs now. This is a pretty standard list, honestly. The matchup's not great for some of these guys, but we'll start with running back number 5 for me, going to be Ezekiel Elliott against Cleveland, a game that I just mentioned. I expect Dallas to put up some huge numbers in this game, and Ezekiel Elliott going to be a bigger part of that, I think, than last week. It's Mike McCarthy, and I like what he's done for that passing game and everything like that. Just hand Julio, I haven't said Julio Jones because we're stuck on Julio Jones. Just hand Ezekiel Elliott the rock a little bit more. I mean, he is a beast back there. He got "feed me" tattooed on himself for a reason. So feed him the ball. And he needs more touches, and that would be my one gripe so far with the Dallas Cowboys offense. But I think it's coming. I really do expect that he's going to be a bigger part of this offense. And this game against Cleveland, where I'm expecting a ton of points, if they get up on Cleveland by a couple scores, we could see them go to the ground even more. So I like Ezekiel Elliott a lot this week.
Yeah, and Zeke had, I think, 3 drops last week versus Seattle as well. So he didn't even do the amount of capable damage that he was doing. But you just know week in and week out, Zeke's going to be that guy in the backfield, and he's going to get his. It's just a matter of that touchdown production, whether or not he can get in the end zone. And I do think Dallas will get up on Cleveland, a little bit early. And I do think Ezekiel Elliott, at least in the second half, the latter parts of the game, I just think he's going to grind that win out for them. So a lot of yards coming for Zeke in mind.
We talked about it. There was a game a couple weeks ago where Dak Prescott had 3 rushing touchdowns. I mean, why? Like, Ezekiel Elliott owners, I mean, I can't imagine watching that. Thank God I don't own him, because I would have been fuming. But, like, how often is that going to happen? You have to think that at some point it's going to level out and Ezekiel Elliott is going to get his normal touchdown production. Also, the person that just made that trade said go Texans. He's a Texans fan. Pal, I am very sorry for the cards that they were dealt to start the 2020 season. I don't think the Texans are a bad football team. I think the
I don't either.
Phenomenal. We saw in that first half, what they are capable of. The Steelers definitely made the right adjustments, but they're going to hang with some teams. They're getting a 0-3 team to face this week. We'll see what happens in that game. Something's got to give, because those are 2 teams that I wouldn't have thought would be sitting in 0-3 holes, especially Minnesota, because, they didn't have the same schedule that Houston did. But when you're handed Kansas City, Baltimore, and Pittsburgh back to back, I mean, that's tough. So I do think the Texans will crawl out of that and get themselves back into the contention for a playoff spot, but not too kind to them so far.
Yeah, no, if I had any pull within the Texans organization, I'd be making some phone calls trying to figure out what the hell they did. Man,
they were like they traded DeAndre Hopkins. We got to find some way to
like, yeah, take that Baltimore matchup in week 17, move it up to week 2.
Okay. My running back 4 here going to be in that same game. I'm going Nick Chubb against the Dallas Cowboys as my running back 4. What a beast this guy is. I mean, I said it before. Kamara, obviously, Christian McCaffrey, those are two guys that are very special at the running back position, mainly because of what they add out of the backfield. To me, the best runner of the football in the NFL is Nick Chubb. I think he's the best pure running back that we have in this league right now, and I'll stand by that. I mean, the two guys that I'm going to mention in front of him are, to me, right there when it comes to actual running of the football. Nick Chubb going against Dallas here. I think that Cleveland has found out what they need to do on offense, what their identity is, and it's running the football with Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt. They're both going to be heavily involved in this game. It does worry me if it were to be a game where game script does flow to them having to play catch up. Nick Chubb is a capable pass catching back, but that could lean more towards Kareem Hunt. So I'm expecting this game to stay a little bit closer. I mentioned what could happen if Dallas does get out in front, but I think this game stays relatively close because I'm not a believer in the Dallas defense. And I think that Nick Chubb should have a big day and keep them in this to the point where they aren't having to play catch up. So I really like Nick Chubb here.
Yeah, and I remember you texting me prior to last week asking me what your thoughts on Chubb were. Sorry, what my thoughts on Chubb were. And I remember telling you that, Hunt's like going to be there and he's going to limit Chubb's upside. It's just a matter of like how much, pretty much what I said. It looks like both of them can coexist just after watching, that week 3 game that Cleveland had. But man, is Nick Chubb damn good at running the football. And I feel like no matter how many passes Kareem Hunt is going to catch or how many receiving touchdowns Kareem Hunt is going to catch, Nick Chubb is going to be the guy they turn to at the end of the day if they need yards.
Yeah, I didn't end up making that trade. Reason being, I definitely need some running back help. But if I'm going to trade Devontae Adams, who very well could finish, even missing that one game, is going to finish as a top 5 receiver this year in fantasy. If I'm going to trade him, I feel like I might even be able to get some more juice out of it in terms of the running back position. For the reason you mentioned, I mean, I love Nick Chubb this week, but if game script flows where they're going to have to be throwing the ball, playing from behind, that could mean Kareem Hunt is getting 15 to 20 touches, at least equaling what Nick Chubb's touches will be. So it's too up in the air for me. I don't love the situation Nick Chubb is in, but I love Nick Chubb. So I think that this is a game where if they stay in it, and I'm going to hope and expect that they do, Nick Chubb could be in for a big day. Sarge is going to love this. Because he just mentioned he has Zeke and Chubb different in leagues. He also has this guy in a league as well. Aaron Jones against the Atlanta Falcons, who I mentioned is another guy that is one of the best pure running backs in the NFL. He does add, the receiving out of the backfield as well. He's capable in that area, but this guy has absolutely popped off to start the season. It's something we talked about, a guy that's playing for a new deal. We'll see if that happens in Green Bay or elsewhere, but for the time being, that offense, Aaron Rodgers looks rejuvenated. Aaron Jones is putting up monster numbers in that offense, and going against Atlanta, a lot of numbers are going to be put up by that Packers offense. As I mentioned, I think they're going to put up 35 plus on Atlanta, and I expect Aaron Jones to be a big part of that as well.
Yeah, as an Aaron Jones owner, I have been very pleasantly surprised by his outings thus far. I think everybody was a little bit scared of they drafted A.J. Dillon very high, and they expected A.J. Dillon to kind of form his own role right away in the Packers offense. But man, like, has Aaron Jones taken the wheel from any possible thought of any other running back taking control of that offense? He plays a significant amount of snaps. He gets work in both the passing and rushing department. And, Devontae Adams being back, I don't think that will hinder him as much as people might think. So Aaron Jones moving forward, just with his production, has been a top 5 back for me week to week.
Stubbs mentioned, remember when Yins told me to get Saquon over Jones? Yeah, guess what? I would have told you to draft Kamara over either of them, and look where he's at. He's been the best. True. So take that for what it's worth. Yeah. But I don't think anybody that would have given you advice would have said taking Aaron Jones. But yeah, I mean, he's been a top 5 guy. So RB2 for me going to be Dalvin Cook against the Houston Texans. A very susceptible defense. We saw James Conner run all over them on Sunday. We saw Anthony McFarland go in there and average 7 yards a carry as well, which was nice to see as Steeler fans. So their team that is absolutely terrible on the ground. Minnesota, a run-first offense, even though there has been some talk about do they need to open the playbook more and go more pass-heavy. I don't see Zimmer doing that. It's not the Mike Zimmer way. They're going to continue to pound the rock. Dalvin Cook has a big day on Sunday.
Yeah, Dalvin Cook fumbled early in the week 3 game, and boy, did he bounce back. He bounced back in a major way. Dalvin Cook returning to the running back we know he can be. He hasn't really been in that like top 5 week-to-week conversation, but I feel like after having a solid week 3, moving to week 4 against that front 7, yeah, I really like Dalvin Cook. I'd probably have him right where you did.
Just for my man here that's a Texans fan, he said, "Come on, don't do the Texans like that." I'm picking the Texans to beat Minnesota. By the way,
That's tough. I don't know. Minnesota looks like a dumpster fire right now, so I'd probably take the Texans as well.
it's just I can't see either one of those teams dropping 0-4. But I mean, unless they're gonna tie, go both be 0-3-1. But if I'm picking a team, and I like the Texans to with the schedule that they've been dealt, man. I mean, they deserve a win.
Yeah, and I think the Vikings might be enticed by the little Trevor Lawrence luck too. So we'll see.
My RB1, my RB1 has been RB1 for the whole season. Alvin Kamara joined us, the Detroit Lions. He's I mean, this is set up perfectly for him to pop off and have another wild day. I mean, a 40-point performance on Sunday Night Football against the Packers. Love this matchup going against Detroit. How could he not be RB1 with what he's doing?
Yeah, there's not much to say when it comes to Alvin Kamara. Just give him the ball and get out the way. Or, if you're an lineman for him, give him the ball and get out in front of him so he can jog to the end zone from the 40-yard line.
It's just hey, if you're the Packers, don't even worry about tackling him. They might have all had him on their fantasy teams or something.
Yeah, maybe. The production he's had thus far, while Latavius Murray still manages to, remain fantasy relevant, excuse me. Murray's still getting 15 to 20 touches a game, and Kamara is still putting up the numbers he has. So that's just crazy ridiculous. Assuming Michael Thomas doesn't play, he's undisputedly going to have another solid week. At least that's the expectation moving forward.
Yeah, it's mouthwatering for me. Those first three, I mean, Alvin Kamara against Detroit, Dalvin Cook against Houston, Aaron Jones against Atlanta. I mean, those are prime spots right there. Okay, so moving along, let's get to our waiver wire talk real quick. I feel like I've talked about this matchup, and I know my man's still in chat. Kirk Cousins is actually my waiver wire pickup, and it's not necessarily this matchup here against Houston. He's only just 26% of the leagues, but I'm looking forward, and they play Seattle and Atlanta after playing Houston, and those are matchups where I expect Seattle's defense, we just talked about how bad they are. I don't know what the status is of Jamal Adams, but that secondary does not look very good with or without Jamal Adams. And then you talk about Atlanta in a team that is just they can't play any type of defense. Who knows if Dan Quinn will still be the head coach at that point? I don't know. But either way, Seattle, a game where they're not going to pass defense, but at the same time, Seattle's going to put up points, so they're probably going to be trailing. So even though Minnesota would love to run the ball, I think they're going to find themselves in a situation where they have to pass the ball. My last point, why I would pick up Kirk Cousins right now, as I said, just owning 26% of the leagues, Justin Jefferson has bounced onto the scene, 175 yards this past Sunday. And this is a guy that I think could really ignite that passing offense. I mean, I'm an Adam Thielen guy. I really like Irv Smith Jr. Kyle Rudolph is whatever he is at this point. But this is a team that should throw the ball probably more than they do, and they need to get out of this their own way. Mike Zimmer needs to realize that you can't run the ball 30 times a game and expect to win football games, especially it's just not the way that they're built. So while Kirk Cousins has not done it yet, he's been absolutely terrible this year. And Sarge, yes, I did tell you to drop him. Going through the guys that are owned in less than 50% of the leagues, I looked at the matchups, and I looked at the emergence of Justin Jefferson, and I looked at the fact that game script is going to force them to throw the ball. I mean, there's just nobody else that I like more, and that's what it comes down to.
Yeah.
No, Sarge.
Captain Kirk. I had him as my waiver guy a couple of weeks ago, and he didn't necessarily pan out. But I mean,
that's how it goes for Kirk Cousins in fantasy or real life.
yeah, really. Week 4, I feel like if there's going to be any turning point for Kirk Cousins, it's going to be this week versus the Texans defense. So we'll see. For my quarterback waiver wire pickup, I broke the 50% rule a little bit. He's owned in about 60% of leagues, but I just couldn't find another guy I really liked better for this weekend moving forward. Joe Burrow versus the Jacksonville Jaguars this week and for the rest of the season as well. He's averaging 20 points per game. Jacksonville's allowed 6 passing touchdowns the last 2 weeks. Burrow's hit 300 consecutive passing performances with an average completion percentage of about 65%. I don't think the Bengals win a whole lot of games in 2020, but I think Joe Burrow has already established himself as the guy moving forward, and he looks tremendous, and I think he's just only going to get better week to week, and I think he has a really nice matchup versus the Jaguars this week.
Yeah, Sarge said, should I drop Tannehill for Cousins? That's what I was saying no to. Is that who you would be starting this week though? Because I definitely would be avoiding Ryan Tannehill this week. We don't even know the status of that game yet, so that's kind of up in the air in itself. But that's obviously a terrible matchup, and we know that. If I had to start one of those two, yeah, I'd probably pick up Cousins to start him over Ryan Tannehill this week. But I don't know who your other option is. Is it? I mean, you have Drew Brees, I believe, in that matchup with Detroit. So I think that I'd probably just roll the dice on Brees, even though he hasn't looked that great to start the season, over Kirk Cousins or
I think Tannehill, whenever comparing to that, I think he's a much more efficient passer. Whereas Kirk Cousins at times this year has just looked completely lost. And we'll see if the emergence of Justin Jefferson can help kind of fix that a little bit, kind of be that elixir. But just right now, moving forward, I feel like Tannehill is probably the safer option.
My running back waiver wire pickup owned in 47% of the leagues. I mentioned him earlier. I'm going to mention him again. Playing 75% of the snaps for the Miami Dolphins is going to be Myles Gaskin. The numbers they're starting to rise, but it's really the usage for me and the hope that he's just going to continue to put up those numbers. So Myles Gaskin played on a Dolphins team that just, for whatever reason, put up 31 on Thursday Night Football against the Jaguars when no one saw that coming. I mean, I don't think the game script will favor him a whole lot, but they have used him catching the ball out of the backfield too. They went and traded a draft pick for Matt Breida. They signed Jordan Howard, who's going to vulture touchdowns, which is going to upset people who do pick up Myles Gaskin after this and then realize he's not the goal line back. But, he's getting his touches. If you're talking about a guy that you need as like a flex play where you're really desperate at RB2 because of injuries or something like that, I think you do a lot worse.
So I also had Gaskin as the running back guy. I had a feeling you were going to pick him again. So I gave like a counter option just in case we did agree. Brian Hill versus the Green Bay Packers is going to be the second running back behind Todd Gurley in Atlanta's offense, owned in 2.5% of leagues. So I'd be very surprised if you weren't able to get him. Like I said, sharing a backfield with Todd Gurley finally broke through with a 15-point fantasy performance. I'm not exactly sure how much of that production can keep moving forward, especially with a guy like Todd Gurley ahead of him. But the Falcons do, plan on using him. He's picked as some kind of like breakout running back guy in training camp, and it finally took him week 3 to emerge and break through for that. So just a name to keep an eye on. I wouldn't start him at all. It's kind of more like a bench stash for the rest of the season.
Yeah, it depends on how many snaps Atlanta's offense has taken, because we know that they want to limit those snaps for Todd Gurley. So if they're on offense a bunch, yeah, Brian Hill is going to get his touches for that team. My wide receiver, this should come as no surprise based off what he did on Sunday Night Football. Allen Lazard in just 50% of leagues. He's emerged as Green Bay's number 2 guy. A lot of people, it was the debate was Marquez Valdez-Scantling or Allen Lazard, and Allen Lazard has kind of taken over that role, at least for the time being. Aaron Rodgers, the biggest thing with him is trust. He trusts him. He loves the guy. There was a funny video of him wiping off his face shield on Sunday Night Football, doing that for him. And, for Aaron Rodgers, the star QB to go and do that, that just shows what he thinks of Allen Lazard. I remember talking about, the options opposite of Devontae Adams to begin the season. Somebody needs to emerge as the number 2 there. If it's Allen Lazard and you can get him right now owning just 50% of the leagues, that's a bet that I'd be willing to make if you're talking about needing a flex guy. I think you do a lot worse than an offense that's putting up 30+ a game right now.
Yeah, I entertained him as my waiver wire pickup, but I just think the return of Devontae Adams was kind of hinder that. But then again, if Aaron Rodgers is still slinging the ball like he is, I feel like there's room for everybody to kind of work there. Similar to the Julio Calvin Ridley situation, there doesn't need to be one producer in a fantasy football offense, especially in a wide receiver core as well. My guy was Laviska Shenault versus the Cincinnati Bengals, owned about 46% of leagues. It looks like the best is ahead of him. He's active in both the passing and rushing game. Averaged 10 points per game up until this day. He faces a not great Bengals defense. He's on the Jaguars offense that doesn't really have a solidified number 1 playmaker. I know they have James Robinson. I know they have a handful of other names. But Shenault's kind of like the gadget Percy Harvin type. That's the player I think of whenever I think of Laviska Shenault. He's involved in all facets, and then that just gives him more opportunity to score.
Yeah, I actually like Laviska Shenault a lot. My tight end, already talked about him on the show a little bit. Mo Alley Cox owning just 10% of Yahoo leagues. We mentioned what he's done in, to start the season, really. I mean, obviously Eric Ebron departs. Jack Doyle's been banged up this season. Even when Jack Doyle comes back, Mo Alley Cox still operated as tight end one in that offense. We know how much Philip Rivers loves his tight ends. He's going to be my waiver wire pickup.
Yeah, it was either him or the guy I picked right now. So Dalton Schultz versus the Cleveland Browns was my guy. Owned about 35% of leagues, 20 targets through 3 games, following the injury to Blake Jarwin, averaging 10 points per game, which is relatively impressive, considering where he can get him and the position he can get him at. Going against a Browns defense that allows the 3rd most receptions in tight end, so I think he's in for a big week.
Okay. And lastly, like I mentioned, I did some studs and duds again of the week. My stud of the week at the quarterback position is going to be Ryan Fitzpatrick, putting up 28.7 points on Thursday Night Football. If you were really in a pinch and had to start him, you were rewarded greatly there, almost 30 points. However, on the reverse side of that, if you started Ryan Tannehill coming off a monster week, you only got 12.24 points. He did throw for over 300 yards, but did not throw a touchdown. And anytime a quarterback does not throw a touchdown, that's not great for their fantasy outlook. So there you go there. The running back position, Stubbs already mentioned this guy in the chat, James Robinson, who a lot of people just got off the waiver wire this past week. Also in that Thursday Night Football game, 27.9 points, as opposed to my dud of the week going to be Melvin Gordon with just 5.8, a guy that I was telling a lot of people to start. Obviously, no Phillip Lindsay in that backfield right now. The quarterback situation is terrible. I just thought they were going to ride Melvin Gordon. The Tampa Bay defense shut him down pretty much. So, yeah, just 5.8 points for him. Wide receiver position. Justin Jefferson scores 27 in really his first action for the team. I mean, kind of like a breakout party. They needed something going opposite of Adam Thielen, and it looks like they found it in Justin Jefferson, a guy that they used the 1st round pick on. We were curious how, quickly he would get incorporated in that offense and take over that role. Obviously, that offense has been missing Stephon Diggs. Maybe he can help alleviate that. In my dud of the week, Julian Edelman, coming off a career day receiving wise, he goes out and scores 3.2 points in that game against the Raiders. That ain't going to cut it, when people are talking about playing you as a wide receiver 2 or flex. So my tight end, and I can't believe that I'm saying this in 2020, Jimmy Graham scores 21 points for the Chicago Bears. We'll see if that continues.
Yeah.
I would lean towards no, but we'll see. Nick Foles in at quarterback. Who knows what's going to happen there? We know how big the tight ends were in Philly. Maybe he goes into Chicago and does the same thing, peppering those tight ends with targets. And my dud of the week, it's got to be Darren Waller coming off the game that he had on Monday Night Football to go out and score 1.9 points. I understand, it was against the Patriots, but still, with the amount that I expected him to get targeted, he goes from 16 targets to 4 targets and didn't catch a single pass until late in that game. So 1.9 points for Darren Waller, who came in as, a top 4 play.
You stud and dud better than anybody, man.
I've been told that. Any closing thoughts?
This show somehow gets funnier every week, whether it's your wit or my top 5 predictions. So
yeah, we're going to continue to monitor those, see where we're at next week. Of course, next week we will be flip-flopping, so Donnie will give you his running backs, receivers. I will switch to the quarterbacks and tight ends. Looking forward to that. We'll see how it goes. We'll monitor this. As always, you can ask us questions on Twitter leading up to your games. Make sure to check your waiver wire and see what's out there. Get those lineups set. Get ready for that Thursday Night Football game between Denver and the New York Jets, which I really, really hope not many people have fantasy implications in that game. You can just play some bets, and that's how you'll enjoy it. But other than that, I did tell you guys about Keats Barbershop, our favorite barbershop on this show. They're located at 180 Brighton Avenue in Rochester, PA. It's an old-fashioned barbershop. He's open from 11 to 7, Tuesday through Friday, 9 to 4 on Saturday. And then every Tuesday, he does $5 off for military personnel, first responders, and nurses. Again, that's Keats Barbershop at 180 Brighton Avenue in Rochester, PA. This has been fun. We will talk to you guys next week. So thanks for listening to the Around the 412 Fantasy Football Podcast. This has been a presentation of Crowworthy, where winners are serving winners coast to coast with sports, gambling, and more. You can follow us on Twitter at Around the 412. Follow me at Z23 Smitty. Follow Donnie at Donnie Drew Win. Go to crowworthy.com. Go to the Pittsburgh City page where you can find this podcast, other podcasts, blogs, and more. We'll talk to you guys next week. Good luck this week. Bye-bye.